Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana 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 Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Vishnupada Paramahansa Prabhu Jaka Mahārāja Srila Prabhupada ki, ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki, Prem Se Ho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktividyā ki, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopakopinath Shyamakunda Radha Kundigiri Govardhana ki, Shri Vrindavan Dhama ki, Shri Mayapur Dhama ki, Ganga Mai ki, Jamuna Mai ki, Bhakti Devi ki, Tulasi Devi ki, Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda ki, Jainatai Gaura Premanandi, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 16, how Parikshit received the age of Kali. Okay, so just to review the start of the conversation, starting from verse 19. Dharma, in the form of a bull, asked, "Madam, are you not hale and hearty? Why are you covered with the shadow of grief? It appears by your face that you become black. Are you suffering from some internal disease, or are you thinking of some relative who is away in a distant place?" Purport. People of the world in this age of Kali are always full of anxieties. Everyone is diseased with some kind of ailment. For the very faces of the people of this age, one can find out the index of the mind. Everyone feels the absence of his relative who is away from home. The particular symptom of the age of Kali is that no family is now blessed to live together. To earn a livelihood, the father lives at a place very far away from the son, or the wife lives far away from the husband, and so on. There are sufferings from internal diseases, separation from those near and dear, and anxieties for maintaining the status quo. These are but some important factors which make the people of this age always unhappy. So you can see is that Prabhupada is giving an essential point here of the Kali Yuga. And so these effects here, these symptoms that you see. So of course it's coming from the principle of not following the Vedic culture. The less they follow, the more that this comes. But even if they are following, they'll still have these problems because of the mentality. So we see is that these aspects, anxieties, disease, and being separated from, those that one wants to be close to, the family and friends and everything like that. So these are just, and then the last one he mentions about anxiety for maintaining the status quo. So these are symptoms of Kali Yuga. And we always have to be careful to consider that things are taken care of properly, but also at the same time is that we have to see that we don't get caught up in these. Does that make sense? Disease will be there, it's just the nature of the yuga, but life goes on. We have to be Krishna conscious, things just go on. The families being broken up, we try as much as possible to keep things together. We should understand is that this is given as the effect. We should understand that previously families were together. So this is something that you try to see that works. Does that make sense? It's not so. Why aren't families together? Right? It's because of efficiency. Right? So much of the talk today is just about being practical, being efficient, being effective. So, but that means the work itself, the generation of economics, is taken as more important and more prominent than the family. Right? The whole idea of family life is to spend that time together and become Krishna conscious. So then the difficulty comes is that anxieties come up because the families aren't together. Right? I'm not able to interact. So in this way, then if there's attachment, it will get in the way of Krishna consciousness. Does that make sense? So that's the whole idea, is that the grihasthas should be, the idea is they best is they're together. In other ages, they could be. Like you see in traditional business communities in India, then the ground floor was the public level. Like now is that you have an area where you live that's private. It's a suburb. Everyone just lives there. There's no businesses. The business is somewhere else. So previously, if you're in the city environment, the ground floor, that is the public environment. And what's upstairs, that's the private. So you lived upstairs, your business was on the ground floor. So your commute to work meant walking down the stairs. You know what I'm saying? So that means, yes.
Like in India,
Yeah, no, you see it so many places. Oh, even old cities, it's like that. Some of the old cities that go back hundreds of years, it's you see that aspect. But the point is previously things were closer, but now the way it's arranged that, and you want to live in a nice place, so you have to be, 2 hours out of the city, and then you have to commute in 2 hours, then out 2 hours, and then 8 hours, so that's 12 hours. Even if it's 1 hour commute, it's 10 hours. So just like this, families are broken up so much. Does that make sense? So, in other words, it's not about family, it's about being Krishna conscious. But the point is family life means it's about these aspects of being together, that experience. So it has to be considered in the arrangement of things. Does that make sense? Another aspect to thing is that maintenance of the status quo. See, in other ages, you just did your duties, and everyone did their duties, and so then naturally the status quo is established by the performance of duties. But nowadays, status quo is a separate endeavor. How you dress, what you drive, what you live, all these different kinds of things that creates the status that may have nothing really to do with your work and other things like that. Does that make sense? So we have to be careful ourselves not to get caught up in this. Because sometimes it's thought, if we do this, it'll be more prestigious and this and that. But the point is people turn to Krishna consciousness not for prestige. They turn because it has answers that their prestige doesn't address. Does that make sense? So we have to be very careful we don't get caught up by these. It means we do things nicely, we do things, by nature we do things very, very properly. We're clean, we're orderly, we do things, scheduled because we're functioning in the pancharatric environment. So we see that everything's kept very nice for the deities and everything works like that. Those qualities themselves already put you into culturally the prestigious environment. Because those who are in a established prestigious environment, they're clean, they're tidy, they're orderly, and they do things on time. Does that make sense? So we're doing it for Krishna, and as a byproduct, the prestige aspect is there. But we're not worried about that. So we have to be very careful that we don't get caught up in it like the karmas, because that's the cause of their anxiety. It's prestige. Does that make sense? Another thing that breaks up the families, because it's prestige, because you could just work your normal hours like that, but if you do those extra times like that, then it'll move you up in the company and you'll get a better facilities and this. It means you'll get, it's just like, let us say, but if we do this, then when I go for, these traveling for the company, then, they'll send me business or first class. But that has zero effect on the family. You understand? You're more time away from the family, and they give you a nice facility for being away from the family. But it doesn't do anything for the family. Maybe you get more money, but when do you spend it? Right? You have money, you spend it with the family, but you're not with the family, so how do you spend it? You understand? So one has to be very careful that these Kali Yuga elements, these are Kali Yuga elements. We take it as that this is modern society. It's already been mentioned 5,000 years ago that this is what Kali Yuga does. And this was at the beginning of Kali Yuga. This is Pariksit Maharaj. Right? So it's just the way it works. It's not that it's different. It's not that the modern is something unique and special and it's never been like this. It's always been like, every Kali Yuga is like this. Right? And then the other three, they don't have that anxiety. That's why it says that when you have the mission of Lord Chaitanya during the 10,000 years, there'll be a golden age. So that means these anxieties and that go away because people don't worry about these things. Right? They're comfortable because if you're not worried about status quo, then you're comfortable to be with the family and just, do things that work. But if it's a matter of prestige and everybody's got to do that, then that's at the expense of the family. Right? And then the more the anxiety, the more the disease. So even then you can't enjoy yourself. You understand? So we have to be, why we're mentioning this is because being in the administrative area, then you have to see that we don't get caught up in that same element of of just being practical is God. Right? You understand? Practicalness, yes, is Krishna, but you also have to understand that he is a person who's also Krishna. Does that make sense? Just being practical, being efficient, these are important, but these are qualities of Brahman. They're not qualities of Bhagavan. You understand? He has the qualities, but we don't see that it's about being practical. It's about relationship. Does that make sense? So for Krishna, spending time with the devotees, that's what's important. Just getting things done, he's already doing that as Paramatma, and he's not with the devotees. That's why it's considered a lower level. He's creating this whole creation just by breathing. He maintains it, he regulates it, he controls it. Right? He's the witness, he's the judge. You know, he's the efficient cause. I mean, everything gets done because of him. But that's not of interest of him. He says he maintains the material creation with 1/1,000,000th of a millionth portion of his potency. So that means it's 1/4 by volume of the total creation. So 3/4 is in the spiritual world and 1/4 is in the material world. But he maintains that 1/4 by 1/1,000,000th of a 1/1,000,000th of his potency. That's all it takes to, what does it take to breathe in, breathe out? Right? Does that make sense? So we see as for Krishna, the aspect of relationships based on, the connection with him, that's what's important. So we always have to see this is what's being managed. You're managing that devotees are getting a Krishna conscious experience. That's what's being managed. Just getting things efficiently done, status quo, all these different things like that, that's not actually, those are the lowest level of the management. Right? That's the mechanical side. The actual main thing is the consideration of the whole picture and how the whole thing holds together. Like that. Does that make sense? This makes the difference between leadership and management. Because you have to remember, you can hire managers, right? Isn't it? It means you can put out an ad and hire managers. Can you put out an ad for leaders? Can you hire a leader? Doesn't exist. So this is the difference. So the examples we'll see here, Parikshit Maharaj, Arjuna, the Pandavas, all these great personalities, they're leaders. Because that's the main thing. Right? That's the excuse me. That's the real thing. Leadership is the real thing. Management is a skill. Just like, cooking or any other kind of art and science, making money. These are all skills. But the point is to be a person that you inspire other people. Right? You just like, you look, politicians, are they inspiring anybody? Personally, no. What about the big corporate businessmen? No. You understand? So that's the whole thing, is that they're taken as your prominent element. But where's the inspiration? So they're not leaders, they're just managers. Does that make sense? Because it's not based on qualities, it's simply based on efficiency. They get control, they have money. Right? Does that make sense? So we have to be able to see the difference between management and leadership. If that's not appreciated, then it's no big deal. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So Prabhupada is saying these are some important factors which makes the people of this age always unhappy. So then as leadership, then you have to address these things. It's not, we're not family centric, we're Krishna centric. Yes.
Mahārāja, you mentioned leaders can't be hired, right? So
means that could they put out an ad to get Napoleon? We're looking for some guy who's not too tall, not too short. He's got a three-cornered hat, and somehow or another he likes to stick his hand in his coat. like that. And they go, yeah, I know a guy like that.
So if there's a scarcity of leaders, is it because nobody's qualified, or is nobody's following a leader enough to become a leader himself?
Well, you have all these things. Is that because it means, where do you get yogurt from? Just milk. But I mean, just, and that acid is in the form of? Yogurt.
Yeah.
Okay, so in other words, yogurt comes from yogurt. You know, just like money comes from money, so leadership comes from leadership. So all it is if you don't grow up, there's no emphasis of it. Because the problem with leadership over management is you need to have character and qualities. Management is so much easier. Right? You just have to be nasty enough to not care about anybody, that you just efficiently get it done despite, right? Because before it was, okay, this may take 2 weeks, but people don't have 2 weeks. They want it done in 1 week. So to do it in 1 week means you can't care for anybody. You understand? So these things are always there. So one has to appreciate that you have to have this higher principle. And so it may appear that it slows things down, but in the long run it doesn't, because you're trying to get a particular effect. You want to be peaceful in your life and Krishna conscious. So that's what leadership is for affecting. You understand? Just being efficient and having this and that structure and all these things, and that's going to make it all happen, that's not going to make anything happen. You can say, no, but it's important. Yes, it's important in supporting the other thing, but who's working on the other thing? You understand? So that's the point, is that if you have community development, it's all about the either talking about qualities. That means either you're talking about a structure, but the point is, just because you have a structure doesn't mean it creates community. Or you talk about qualities. Everyone should be good, everyone should be nice, everyone should be considerate. But where do those qualities come from? Where do you get them?
Why?
Yeah, so, yeah, and what's the reason why you should be nice? So these things aren't really discussed. So the idea is that you have to have, how you say, the understanding of Krishna consciousness, then these things have meaning. Jai Ho. Just discussing the difference between leadership and management. Yeah. So this is the thing. These are, some important factors which make the people of this age always unhappy. So these are important factors. There's so many little details. So we have to see that what one's managing or what's organizing is bringing about the Krishna conscious result, and that means you have a nice, pleasant, stable environment. It means as pleasant as you can be. It's called a yuga. You can't expect everything. Does that make sense? So it's just clear what it is one's doing. That makes sense? It sets a slightly different flavor than the contemporary, management seminars, which is about technique. We always have to remember technique is the lowest. Then there's the application, the attitude within which you apply the technique. That's the next step up. Then there's the reason why the technique is being done. That's to please Krishna. That's the highest. Does that make sense? Now, of these, if we look at them from the social point of view, we're going to make the knowledge and skills the top. Right? Because that's what functions in that level. But the actual point of it is the other way around. So it's just a matter of, do we put Krishna on the top and then they fall in place that way, or do we just put the social consideration on top and put it the other way? Does that make sense? It's just like, okay, Then we have Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and Advaitacharya. Okay? Now, if we're looking at it from the spiritual point of view, then who's the top? Yes, Lord Chaitanya. Then who's next? Nityananda. Got that right. Huh? Okay. And then who's next? Advaita. You have to think about that. Okay. Does that make sense? So that's the actual point. So in other words, Lord Nityananda and Advaitacharya are working to please Lord Chaitanya. There is no other purpose to their life. Does that make sense? So, and we see is that by getting the blessings of Advaitacharya means then one can give up the idea that I'm the controller and enjoyer. And then by having his blessings, you can get the blessings of Lord Nityananda, which you can give up all material, interest and desire. Then you can get Lord Chaitanya's mercy, which means you can get love for Krishna. You understand? So in other words, these efficient things of dealing with the material world, they're only in support of developing prema. Does that make sense? So in other words, knowledge and skills is not going to develop prema. It's the devotion in which that's done that will develop prema. There are two different things happening at once. Does that make sense? So it's just like, let us say you have an attitude and you're cooking, right? So you cook for someone. It's the attitude that pleases them, right? And then that's going to come through the medium of what's cooked, and that's going to be your technique with your pots and pans. Does that make sense? That makes sense or doesn't make sense? Yeah? So that this has to be able to be seen. You have to be, as leadership, you have to be able to split these two. Because if you don't, then it'll be thought that my technique is what's making everything perfect. My technique is taking me back to Godhead. It'll never take you back to Godhead. It's the same technique that they're using downtown. Right? Whatever technique we will discuss, down in Central, they're using that themselves. But are they developing prema? Are they developing good qualities? Or, right? Does that make sense? I say Nama Ruchi, Vaishnav Seva, and Jiva Doya. Is that, what's the coming, like that? And how they're having the board meeting, then now and again somebody breaks out in ecstasy, they just can't hold themselves, and and then the guy leading the meeting, we talked about this, you got to control those ecstatic symptoms, like how you say, mountain in the ocean, none of this, what do you call it, cotton in the breeze stuff, like that. And yes, I'll work on it. Like that, that's why he moved up, that's why he got the promotion and not you, he's at least he's come to the pebble in the pond, like that, but you're still, cotton in the breeze, so can't have you going to these meetings and breaking out in ecstatic symptoms, when we're cutting a deal, so. Does that make sense? So it's not happening. You understand? You have to, this is one of our heaviest conditionings, is that we think that the knowledge skills is the real deal. It creates happiness, it fulfills all desires, it makes everything perfect. This is the central core of our, well, not the central core, but you could say the external essence of our conditioning. The actual core is that it's not connected to Krishna. Right? Because you have Krishna's desire, right, which is the Icha Shakti. You have the activity that's being performed that creates results that we offer to Krishna. That's the Kriya Shakti, right? That's the the attraction, the attack, the performance of the activities like that, the attitude like this. Then we have the Jnana Shakti, right? So as we're going down, Jnana supports Kriya, Kriya then supports Icha. Right? So the Jnana means it's the knowledge and skills. right? So if you have knowledge and skills, then you can perform an activity with the idea to please Krishna, and getting that result, then it can be offered to Krishna. Right? Does that make sense? That's the complete package. So we see in here, pleasing Krishna, that's the Icha, that's the primary element. The Jnana and Kriya, those are the secondary. Okay? So we're here in the material world because we neglect the Icha, Krishna. So it's not about attraction to Krishna. It's about attraction to the results from Jnana and Kriya, and that we can enjoy them rather than offering them to Krishna. So in other words, the process that we accept looks exactly the same as the process used in the spiritual world, just we leave Krishna out of it. Right? So for the spiritual world, we hear, how much the Brajabasis, now they're completely absorbed in Krishna. Right? And they're doing fine. Like Nanda Baba and that, their farming is going on nicely. Where you see that they're living in palaces, they're not living in just some mud hut. Right? So they're doing well as farmers. And in Dwarka, that means it's managed, right? And in Dwarka, then they have a big kingdom there. And they're respected amongst, in India as powerful, individuals. And the place that they have looks better than anybody else's place. Right? Other places it'll say it has a nice this or a nice that. Right? And they'll talk about the organization of it. The roads are like this and that is according to Vastu, nice case. So they'll be talking about the Vastu aspect. But when he talks about Dwarka, then you talk about, it's beyond that. It's so perfect and beautiful, and the environment and the atmosphere. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that means they're managing it. But that's not the focus. Does that make sense? It's not the focus. It's on the person. Yes.
Does this attract or desire has something to do, like, if a person wants to do something for Krishna, but it's not maybe in the beginning very good at it, like he doesn't have the skill, he or she wants to make probably part of the devotion, try to make it as fine, I guess.
Yeah. Yes.
But what do you think in that one sense, for example, if I try to paint a nice backdrop, I don't have any skills for painting, but I try my best, or if somebody's singing, but doesn't have very nice voice or cannot carry different melodies, does this kind of thing please Krishna if that person is doing to the best?
Yes. That's the whole point of devotion. That's more pleasing to Krishna, like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur at the last kirtans. Then they had all the best kirtaniers that are there in the mission. And they were all singing and, trying to do really, really nice stuff and all that. But at the end, he says he wanted this other devotee to sing. He was the one that would, I think, take care of the Goshala. He was the one that, in the story where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the big scholar, big Sanskrit scholar, came and wanted to talk with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He says, "Oh, I'm not the man. You should go see this devotee." That was that one in the Goshala, because his devotion was so nice. He was the one that covered from head to toe with cow dung, right? So he asked that he sings, and he was one of those, can't carry a tune in a bucket kind of people, like that. And so he preferred that. Yes, and so it's devotion. So the point is the devotion, who can do the best with devotion is who you pick. And then if there's amongst those with devotion someone who has better skill, since it's for Krishna, you want the nice result, then you do that for Krishna. Then you have them do. But it's not that technique is more important than devotion. This is always a very, very important aspect. Because if we're managing, basically we're dealing with the Jnana and Kriya Shaktis. But we have to understand is they're always subordinate to pleasing Krishna. I mean, how you say, in one sense, for many managers, this is probably the most bitter pill that you could be bringing forward. But the reality is this, other than devotion, nothing has importance unless it's connected to Krishna. Prahlad Maharaj says that, he's a big manager. Right? He'll be in charge of, one of those big talas, Sutala or one of those. So, we're living on a very small portion of how you say, no, not Bharatvarsha, Jambudvip, no, that's bigger than Jambudvip, Bhumandala. Right, Bhumandala, and then that has 7 islands, so then Jambudvip's one of that has 9 Varshas, then Bharatvarsha's one of that, and on Bharatakanda is 1/9 of that. That's what we're on, and we don't control that much. He controls a whole mandala. Right? So, good manager. But he will make it very clear that all the religious processes, unless they're connected to Krishna, they are a waste of time. Because efficiently you got something done, but what does the soul gain? So in other words, to be a leader, first you have to be a devotee. And inspired in Krishna consciousness can inspire others in Krishna consciousness. Then on top of that, then you have some expertise or some skill in some area that you can also then take people forward. Either you can just inspire them, so by your speaking and all that, you're inspiring, taking forward, like Sukadeva Goswami, like that, or then someone like Yudhishthira Maharaj who can organize it, or some business person who can then create the economics, or so in other words, that inspiration in Krishna consciousness is the first point. Then if you have these various knowledge and skills in either in training, in administration, or in economics, then you work there. But without that leadership and devotion, then it doesn't have any real meaning in our society. And outside they have it, and then they're gone. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, just as an example, how much was Nokia part of the Finnish scene in its day? It's just like it's Finnish. But unfortunately, it is finished. It's gone. And who bought it? Right, Motorola or something from America, right? So that's the whole thing, is that on the material platform, these things just disappear, especially now. Quicker and quicker, they all disappear. Right? But those who are leaders, who inspired people, they're the only ones that in history people talk about. Someone's very expert at doing something, who cares? You know what I'm saying? So that's just how the whole process works. So this element that you're mentioning about the bhakti, that devotion, that's actually the real point. So it doesn't mean that you can't have a manager who may not be very advanced devotionally. They may be new, but they're good managers, so they can organize all kinds of things as long as they're following someone who is a leader. Does that make sense? Because in the Vedic system, you had your kings who are leaders, who are administrators. They would be following Brahmins who aren't administrators. Does that make sense? So you can have someone who's brand new, but good at management, and is submissive to authority, so therefore he knows what to do and gets things done. Does that make sense? Yeah, so that's the point, is one has to understand they're two different things. Like that. So if you look back, sometimes they talk about the early days in ISKCON and this and that, because there you had leaders. A few of them were managers. Some of them could do big stuff. Most couldn't, but there were lots of leaders because they were very inspiring in Krishna consciousness. Is that? Yeah. So, yes. So we have to see is that this is then the essential element. So as we were saying, there is the conditioning. So then so what happens is that those who are on the transcendental platform, who have love for Krishna, then they see pleasing Krishna, then in this environment, then with this knowledge and skills, you could perform this activity to please Krishna. So they're always starting with Krishna. Then they're coming down into the area of knowledge and skills and that. Does that make sense? So what is material consciousness? It's the same field, just you leave Krishna out of it. Right? So if you have a result, but it's not offered to Krishna, and you performed an activity to get that result, and you had the knowledge and skills to perform the activity to get the result, does that not sound like what's going on today? Is that not the discussion of every management seminar that there is on the planet? Every book that's on the shelf, it'll be describing these three things. But where's Krishna? So we have to remember this is the secondary. Krishna's the primary. So just that we're using management and using it well does not mean that it's Krishna conscious. You know, just like, because there's chefs in town, best cooks, but it doesn't mean that they're Krishna conscious. Right? You have, what's his name? Not Boris. Boris is the drink. Can't remember. You have Raikkonen. Bottas, yeah. So is he a good driver? Is he Krishna conscious? No. So technically speaking, he is, one of two best drivers in the world. But he's not Krishna conscious. And neither is the other guy, the British guy. You understand? So this idea that knowledge and skill is what's going to make it perfect, it doesn't exist. It is simply the status quo. Anxieties for maintaining the status quo. It's a symptom of Kali Yuga. That we think that the knowledge and skill is the real thing. It has the substance. No, it's what mechanically does things, but it doesn't have any substance for the soul. Right? Does that make sense? So just on a side point, psychologically describing why we say there's no substance. Because you can see as no, but it gives tangible results. But tangible, what do we call tangible? That it exists, is it tangible? Or that it gives us a particular experience that is tangible? Does that make sense? Let's say you have two different people. They go into the same environment. Right? And then after being in that same experience, that same environment, you talk to them. Was it nice or not? One of them says it was great, the other one says it was terrible. The environment's exactly the same. So whatever you can produce by knowledge and skills only creates an abstract result. And it only becomes tangible when someone experiences it. So if that experience is Krishna conscious, then it's a concrete Krishna conscious experience. If they experience it as a nice thing, then it's nice. If they experience it as a bad thing, it's bad. It has nothing to do with what you've produced. It's how they experience it. That's why you can have a nice thing, and because people are so external, you don't have a nice arrangement, they don't think it's something special. Right? You could take a preparation that's not that great and put it in this very nice decorative arrangement on one table, and on another table you have something that's really fabulous and just kind of put it together simply. Or just, bring it out and the thing, the plate, the thing you baked it in the oven, just stick it on the table and put a spoon there. And people will say that the one that looked great was fabulous and the other one was ordinary. Even though by a chef's standard, it's the exact opposite. So it's all about the experience. You know what I'm saying? You go to these fancy restaurants and all that, and so you're paying for the atmosphere, because what they put on your plate is not that much. Some are good, some are not. Some of their things are unique. Some of them are really weird. Does that make sense? So we have to understand is that the experience, that's why we're saying the Icha is the main thing. So it's Krishna's experience. That's the primary. Our experience is when Krishna is pleased, we're pleased. Right? That's the philosophy. It's not when we're pleased, Krishna will be pleased. It doesn't work like that. Does that make sense? Yes.
It's more, this is in the same category that you tell something and it's maybe true, but if it's not accepted, it's not really speaking the truth.
It means if you're talking about Krishna speaking the truth, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has an effect on that person. That's why then in preaching, It means that you're trying to take the absolute truth and present it in words and examples that the individuals can relate to. You understand? You have to get it through to them.
Yeah.
Then it becomes concrete for them.
Yeah.
But otherwise, if you just speak and they don't get anything out of it, then they'll say it's theoretical or it's abstract. That's the whole point. If they don't get an experience, it's theoretical. If they get an experience, then it's concrete. That's the whole point, is we're living entities. So it's not mechanics please a living entity. Experience pleases the living entity. But the point is that the experience connected to Krishna, or is the experience connected with the mechanics? So that's the material consciousness, is we've left Krishna out of it. We perform the same knowledge, same skills, get the same results, and then we try to enjoy that. And we say that this is good. If I enjoy it, it's good, rather than if Krishna enjoys it. That's why we don't mind doing things that is not recommended, because we'll say it's great. Because for us it's great. But things that are recommended for Krishna, then we will say, oh, that's fanatic. Right? Because fanatic means it's theoretical. And theoretical means it's for Krishna, not for me. You understand? So we see as the root of all this is that how good we are at being devotees is how good we'll be able at using the knowledge and skill and techniques in Krishna's service. Otherwise, we may be the best manager on the planet, but that doesn't mean that's going to make us Krishna conscious. Because it's a matter of changing the consciousness, how we view things. It has to be about Krishna. As we said, is that how Nanda Baba manages his farm there, or how Ugrasena manages Dwarka, is no different than management here. Here's a reflection of there. The difference is there they do it to please Krishna, here we do it to please ourselves. So yes?
Yes, mantra for Prabhupada is Shunyavadi Prasatya.
Yes, yes.
Empowered Christians areas where
Yes.
all the needs are void.
Yes.
So the question is, because it's not being preached like a philosophy, voidism in the West. It's not. This is how life is. It's not.
Yeah.
But can it be seen in exactly this emphasis in form and technique only, without substance? This is the
Yeah, because that's where it comes from. In other words, when you're dealing with Icha, Jnana, and Kriya, from Icha you'll get fulfilling Krishna's desire. That's the main thing. That's the focus. So the sweetness in that. You get Goloka. From the Jnana, from the Kriya, then it means it's about the activity, the results, the greatness of it, that attitude of surrender. That will get you Vaikuntha. And from Jnana, then that will expand and you'll get the Brahman and, that aspect. Because all these knowledge, skills, the techniques, all that's from the Brahman platform, because it simply is that, okay, we have this book here, right? And it's just the generic point of a book and a stand, and you put them together, the book goes on the book stand, then you fulfilled the technique that is there that the Brahman is giving. You understand? And then we'll say that's perfect. But the point is, why are you doing that? So we're putting the book here because it's Bhagavatam, so we'll discuss it about Krishna. Right? So therefore the Jnana aspect then supports the Icha. You understand? So the mechanics aren't different. It's just the quality of things and all that are better there. But the technique is the same. Mother Jashoda makes a fire, puts a pot on top of that, throws things inside, and cooks for Krishna. Right? Does that make sense? So due to, again, the Nirvase Shunyavadi, the impersonalist, because by logic we go, this material world's giving us trouble. All the techniques, all the activities gives us trouble. So we as an individual don't want trouble. So then not having trouble, we'll take that is spiritual. And so that means then spiritual means none of this. So that's then where we get that from. Because we're trying to use logic to understand transcendence. But the point is if you're looking at a reflection, because they're just looking at it from that, why not look at it from it's a reflection? And in a reflection, you see everything's backwards or upside down. You know, if you look in the mirror, your right arm is the left arm in the mirror. You know what I'm saying? And so everything's reversed. You know, or if you have the, you know, the tree on the bank of the water, the tree in the water is upside down. So everything gets reversed. So therefore, what's the lowest in the spiritual world, or the jnana shakti, that becomes the highest here. Does that make sense? And fulfilling people's desires, oh, you're being sentimental. Well, what's the whole point of having a job and having the career and prestige if you're not pleasing yourself and your family and friends? Oh, that's sentimental. Oh, we thought you were professional, you know, and you're going to give into these things. You know, we thought that you could go out there and do the job. I guess we'll have to find someone else, right? And who's saying that? The boss. And what is he doing on Christmas? He's at home with his family. He's not stupid. He just knows that due to pushing this point of maintaining the status quo, he can get middle managers to not take care of their family, so he can take care of his. Because he is being so greedy, he can't be satisfied that over the weekend, you know, during Christmas, that he's not making money. Well, previously is that, you know, you have that, everybody goes home and everybody like that because it was an important thing. But nowadays, he still has to make money. And how will he do that? By breaking up everybody else's family. He doesn't care. He's smart enough to know that if you're stupid enough to take it, you don't have to take it. Of course, you won't make the money, but you know what I'm saying? They have their materialistic tricks. So the point is that this jnana is taken as the highest when it actually isn't. You know, it only has the purpose if you can't apply it. You know, it's just like, let's say you have the guy teaching the MBA course, right? Now, what he's talking about is how you make hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars. If that's the case, why isn't he making that? Right? Why is he in anxiety if he's going to keep his job? Because he only has the knowledge of it. And then the guy who goes to the course, he'll make more money. And the guy that hires the guy that goes to the course, he'll make the most money. Does that make sense? So that's the thing is that it actually, if you look at it, it's still the lowest here, but it's presented as the highest. Because those that are smart, they make the profit. So that's the whole thing, is that when you step out of the standard element into the demoniac kind of, or atheistic nature, then all these qualities and all that, then they're pushing society. You say it's doing better than ever before, but at what expense? You know, so that's the difficulty. You know, so for having the economy be booming more than before, but still it's so hard to get a place to stay. You know, before everyone lived out in the village and a few people lived in the city. And now the only place affordable is still out in the village. So nothing's changed. You know. Does that make sense? So the difficulty comes up is that when we take Krishna out of the equation, that equation is nothing special. It's the ordinary, standard, mechanical way things work. Right? And it's not that some individuals have the monopoly on that or the franchise on that. It's God's creed, it's God's laws. And when you're dealing with Brahman, you're dealing with all the laws. So in other words, Brahman, laws of nature, you're dealing with the same aspects, the universal form. These are all the laws. This is how this is the structure of how things function. Then you do something with that structure. That's the Kriya. And then there's a purpose for that. That's the Icha. So is the Icha Krishna or is the Icha us? Does that make sense? So we have to be able to distinguish. Because being able to appreciate the Brahman aspect, then that's part of our philosophy. But we never in any way allow it to take precedent over the personal. Yes? Krishna conscious result means the result that you get is pleasing to Krishna. It's not the thing. You know, like we said before, you cook something, but with great pride, and it's expertly done, and you're so proud of that, it's not valuable to Krishna. So the result is Krishna's pleasure. That's the result you want. Right? Now, when we don't necessarily know so much about it, we try to do the best for Krishna. So we're not saying that we don't use the knowledge and skills and all that. We just have to know the proportion. In other words, so we're taking it that, okay, whatever importance I put now to knowledge and skills, I throw that out and I put Krishna's pleasure there in that place. Right? So then that means then the application of the knowledge skills goes below that, and the knowledge and skills itself is down on the bottom. So therefore, since I only care about what's at the level that I have a goal as, everything below that doesn't matter. Right? So we're saying the same thing that Prahlad Maharaj says. Right? You know, if it's not connected to Krishna, it doesn't matter. But the point is we're taking it that our level, then that's the specialness. But in actuality is that if you take it that knowledge and skill has so much meaning to people, then you have to look at it, and the reality is that means the Kriya has more. Right? And then pleasing Krishna, that has the most. So it goes beyond that. It's unlimited. Does that make sense? So we always try to take that prema and bring it down to the level of my enthusiasm. And then everything goes below that, so it doesn't matter. Understand? So we give up. We think, oh, okay, so we don't have to endeavor. We don't have to learn the knowledge. We don't care for any of these things. You understand? But the point is no, we take our nature. If our nature is to have that level of knowledge and skills, we do that. We do that for Krishna. But we have to understand is pleasing Krishna is more important. Right? Because if we're functioning on this lower level, then we have to understand the higher level is above this. Not bring the upper level down to our level, and then, you understand? Otherwise you don't get the balance. So we, with enthusiasm, take whatever we can do and try to do that to please Krishna. So the form of it doesn't have to change. We just have to adjust the consciousness. That's what we're saying. Yes.
Is it correct to understand that the infectious quality of experience is Krishna?
It is Krishna, it's just a matter of what level it is Krishna. Means the experience that we're getting, it can be either at that Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan level. So Bhagavan means it's within Krishna consciousness, pleasing to Krishna. The Brahman we've mentioned, okay, whatever the quality of something that is there, let's say, you go outside and it's fresh, you know, that freshness is Krishna, or that the sun is out and so has that inspirational level, that inspiration of the sunshine, that's Krishna. This is all the Brahman Plav, and this is universal form. So when it says Krishna's everything, it means that. So you can see Krishna in everything. But the point is he's a person, right? So that's what keeps it out of impersonalism. But it's on that platform of Gyan. So it's the same kind of view, it's just whether you see the person involved or not, right? But higher than that is then, you know, the specialness of Krishna, the uniqueness of Krishna, like that. So that'll bring it to, you know, he's God and all that, to the Paramatma level. But then beyond that is the Bhagavan, that he is a person, then he likes things in this atmosphere. So he likes it to be pleasant and sunny and, you know, stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Your example of the effectiveness in which a devotee inspires others, that the devotee himself is happy.
Yes.
That experience inspires others.
Yes.
For example, watching a troupe of professional dancers who are technically brilliant,
Right.
Their palpable enjoyment of what they're doing somehow transpires to the audience.
Yes.
The audience.
Yes, so it's not the mechanics, because otherwise you have dancers who are technically perfect, but no one's inspired. So they would rather watch someone who's just maybe a little less technically perfect, but has the good mood. But of course, they want to watch someone who's technically perfect and the good mood. So those are very rare. You know, you hear about those, you know, there's one or two of them a century. Does that make sense? You know, if you ask about those prima donnas, those are, you could name them. There's not that many. You know what I'm saying? And they could name them back for the last 200-300 years. So that's the whole point, is that Krishna consciousness means everybody can be like that. Because the point is that guna and karma means you work at your best according to your nature. And so that being done for Krishna, that's perfect. You know what I'm saying? That's the universal aspect of Krishna consciousness. What we're taking is that, no, we have to follow modern standards of that. No, we consider modern standards, but anything that of modern value would be already included in Krishna consciousness. It's just a matter of if that's what people are looking for, then we're aware of that. You know what I'm saying? Just like, let's say you're having some kind of program, you're inviting over a group of people. Then if you're, now in that, we like to make a pleasant arrangement for Krishna. Now if, let's say, some people you're inviting over, they're more kind of like socially, of social status, then you'll try to make arrangements accordingly. If they're not, then they just like things very straightforward, then you'll arrange accordingly. But the point is making a nice atmosphere in which Krishna consciousness is experienced. That's just part of Krishna consciousness. So it's not that we're having to compromise. No, it's anything of good quality is already there in Krishna consciousness. You know what I'm saying? But it's just that the modern dictates that that quality is seen here, not something else. You know, it's just like, okay, you have, let's say you have a Ferrari, so then that is a car. But now if you talk to people who collect cars, you know, they got the money to collect cars, so they can buy a Ferrari, no problem. But they got some other classic cars that are completely different. Because there's more to the definition. It's just what's popular is what's, you know what I'm saying? So that's why what's popular is overrated. Because very easily, that's this thing. Oh, okay, I'm just, because I can't see the little white thing, and I'm thinking, wow, it's just floating in the air. Right? Bhagavatam's on top, so it's transcendental. Does that make sense? Yes, okay. Yes.
Just wonder, if we don't have that inspiration, is it okay if we're mentally,
Inspired.
yeah, like, okay, we're going to do this for Krishna,
Yeah, you can try. Point is whatever works. But the thing is that sadhana bhakti means that we may not have, because real inspiration is prema, right? That's the actual inspiration, like that. And so then, if we don't have, but we value that, and because we value that, then we try to follow the process that will get that. You know what I'm saying? In other words, prema, which is ragatmika bhakti, means rag atmika, means the rag, or the attachment to Krishna, is the soul, atma, right? So then to gain that, then you follow rag anuga, means following the footsteps of those in rag, right? But to get rag anuga, we follow the vaidhi, because by following the rules, that will bring us to bhava, which is rag anuga. Does that make sense? So our enthusiasm to follow the rules, then that will get us through. It just means it's the form of expression is adjusting. But that same principle that we're enthusiastic, and even if we don't emotionally enthusiastic, intellectually we're enthusiastic, because we know it works. We have the knowledge that it works. We're convinced. So basically, if we're convinced, then we can convince others. Does that make sense? Like that. So that means the access is there for everybody, you know, to be involved and inspired in Krishna consciousness. Now, whether one takes a leadership role or not, that's another thing. Leadership, in this case, we're talking about those who are administrating, managing like this. But someone else can be a leader and not be administrating. You know, they're just very, very absorbed in their Krishna consciousness and in their service, and they're an inspiration to others that they see that they're absorbed in their service, and you could be like that, because that's the ultimate. In other words, they may not be showing an example within the secondary aspects, but within the primary they are, and that's the most important. So anybody can take inspiration from anybody else, because let's say you have a manager and someone else who's not a manager, but the non-manager is so absorbed in their service that that's inspiring to the manager, then he becomes inspired in his service, which happens to be managing. Does that make sense? So that's the thing, the core is Krishna consciousness. If that's there, all these other things will go. It doesn't matter if it's being done for Krishna and we're sincerely trying to do our best. What does it matter? What's not artificial? Right? You know, go downtown, the sun's out, what are the girls wearing? Right? Is it not artificial for the weather? It's freezing. You know what I'm saying? You know, material life is artificial. Everyone's saying it's fabulous and great and all this, and, you know, but it's not. But, you know, otherwise, what do they have? So the point is, if you only have the secondary, then within secondary, you have to say this is better than that. But when you have the primary, that's the good thing, and the secondary according to your ability. Is that? Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Is it all the time that can we be sometimes so much, going our consciousness with Krishna may be pleased, or he is also making us purified by different difficult experiences? We may not feel so pleased, but Krishna is pleased. Is it possible?
Yeah, that's possible. But you just have to see that are the others pleased? If the devotees are happy, then you can get an idea Krishna's happy. Right? You know, but for us, there may be something that's being purified in our consciousness. You know, so like that. So it's just a matter of you just one continues in Krishna consciousness. One sees what is recommended, and then one tries one's best to accomplish that. And then one, you know, checks and sees how the devotees are responding. Does that make sense? Yeah. But it's not about a vox populi devotee thing, you know, about those who are, you know, mature like this. And then if everybody is responding nicely, then that's even better. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, to this point about the inspiration before you on the higher levels.
Yes.
How Prabhupada describes plants, enthusiasm in lack of instruction.
Yes. Yes.
Says, you know three things. You are pleasure-seeking soul.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't make it in the material world.
Right.
So, and now you have the opportunity.
Mm.
That's enthusiasm.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. No. Very nice. No, so that's the endeavor with intelligence. So that would be the intelligence that you know you didn't make it. You need to be intelligent to understand that. And now Krishna consciousness is the opportunity where you can be. So that would be, that would be the detail of endeavor with intelligence. That's nice. So that's as Bhaktividyā Thakur points out, is that you can't understand the spiritual by material intelligence. But the explanation of Krishna consciousness doesn't mean that material intelligence or logic won't be satisfied. Right? Because it is logical, but it's only by Krishna's grace you'll understand it. That's why we can present something so logical, and many times an intelligent materialist can't understand it, because they don't have the sukriti, they don't have the piety to understand. So Krishna, there's no interest, so it's not revealed. like that. Because everything, all knowledge is revelation. It's just that material, you perform the appropriate material endeavor, you get the material result. Krishna, you're approaching Krishna as material, and he'll reciprocate as material, because he is knowledge. So you follow the rules of knowledge, and Krishna being pleased, he will give you material knowledge. But if you want spiritual, then you have to please him spiritually. So all you're changing is the consciousness. Is that good? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Are we going till, okay, another half hour, right? Till the break. Okay. So then from text 20. I have lost my 3 legs and am now standing on one only. Are you lamenting for my state of existence? Right? So Dharma is still speaking. So he's standing on one leg. Or are you in great anxiety because henceforth the unlawful meat-eaters will exploit you? Or are you in a sorry plight because the demigods are now bereft of their share of sacrificial offerings because no sacrifices are being performed at present? Or are you grieving for living beings because of their suffering due to famine and drought? Right, so, you started off with her herself and these kind of elements like that, the personal kind of aspects, and then you go beyond into the greater aspects of the existence and all that, the effects that are there. Because we see is that from this first effects, first situations, then comes these further aspects. Right? Purport. With the progress of the age of Kali, 4 things particularly, namely the duration of life, mercy, the power of recollection, and moral or religious principles will gradually diminish. Right? So duration of life we see is that, they were always so, I don't know if they talk about it now, but it was a big talk before, 60s, 70s, 80s, about how life is getting longer, life expectancy is longer and everything like that. They don't talk about it anymore because it's starting to go down. But they're not going to reveal that, because if they do, they won't make as much money. And so then, seeing that money is God, so therefore you have to, know what the principal point is and see that, how you say, God as money is being pleased, right? So, yeah. So the duration of life we see goes down because people aren't regulated. Prabhupada mentions, by regulation, life will be longer. By taking dairy products, life will be longer. By not having anxiety, by, being absorbed in your duties and things like this, then that, having proper support, the social and all, these all make for longer life. Like that. And so all these things are going down. Regulation is not there because it's all about whatever you want, whenever you want. 24 hours you can get gratification in any situation. So it's not about being regulated. Like before, it's like, restaurants that serve breakfast opened at a certain time. And those that serve dinner opened at a certain time. Now, depending on what it is, some restaurants you can get breakfast 24 hours a day. Because somebody just got up at 10 at night, he wants breakfast. Does that make sense? So that's the problem. There's no regulation. So the duration of life goes down. Dairy products, we see some use them very nicely. They have advantage, but it's also very popular now to move away from dairy products, and somehow or another that will make life better, but it will shorten the duration of life, like that. And then mercy, it's about yourself, and it used to be about yourself, community, family, like that, but now it's more and more about yourself, because that's how advertising goes. Because otherwise, in one family, you buy one thing. But if you break that down, then the whole family, everybody wants one. Does that make sense? So it's more profit for business. So it's does that make sense? And more profit in business means more taxes means the government gets. So that kind of thing. So then everybody's happy, except the common person. So this mercy goes down because we just don't care. Because if you care, then you're weak. If you're weak, then you don't control and enjoy. That's the modern context. So it goes down. Power of recollection, it's like, it's like, just think of before, you actually had to have your mathematical tables, memorized. Now, it's like, things like 7 times 6, 9 times 7, You know, these kind of ideas, they're blur kind of in the middle there, right? But don't worry, your phone will take care of it. You know, people can't remember. He's got all the things. It's all there in your phone. You know, does that make sense? It goes that people, it's taken care of so no one notices, but it's a symptom of Kali Yuga. They don't know. And the moral or religious principles will gradually diminish. So people are less and less worried about this. So religious means that it's actually the authorized methods. You know, the laws of nature, the laws of God. That we can say are religious. So the theistic element of following laws. Then that includes morality. In other words, it's theistic morality. It probably mentions both here because you can have non-theistic morality and theistic. So theistic means it's laws of God, you accept that. So laws of nature are laws of God. But if you don't accept God, you take the same laws of nature and then it's just science. You know, that's what establishes it. So then the difficulty is that if you're using the religion, then there's an established standard, or at least a general principle. But when you're dealing with the modern, then the problem is that it's the construct that people in general or popularly say is good. Does that make sense? So it doesn't have to be according to the law. That's why much of the times you see is the modern things keep changing. Some things stay, but most change because their interpretation of the law is not actually real. You understand? Their morality, it doesn't work. It doesn't get an effect. So then with time, they're quite attached, so they'll push for a while, but at some point then it'll be given up. Does that make sense? You know, it's just like you see politically. I think you have the same here. It's happening so many countries, you could say in the last 6 months to a year or so, that many times politically they're swinging from liberal to conservative. But even though the conservatives don't really call themselves conservatives now, but you know who's who, but you understand? Because the liberal thing, just interpreting the morality according to just vox populi, is going in one direction. It's not actually giving the facilities and the happiness that it's being said to promise. So the other things, you just know it's practical, you have to deal, then it swings the other way. Right? And then things will pick up. But then people will take advantage of that, and a few people will get the maximum out of it, and the others won't, so it'll start to go liberal again. Until it goes so liberal it doesn't work, then it'll go back and it'll become too conservative, it doesn't work, then it just keeps going like that. So that's the point, is the idea is the religious principles, that if it's theistic, it keeps that pendulum swing to a minimum. Like that. But if you just make it up yourself, then it's very big swings. Does that make sense? So you see is that these things go down, and so people aren't following any of this. And so then they don't really gain much. They don't gain much personally. They don't gain much as a family, as a community, as a nation. You know, even though it's all about sense gratification, you know, where's the sense gratification? Right? That's the whole difficulty. So, yeah. Enjoyment, yeah, they think means enjoyment means happiness, but that's the problem, is with happiness comes distress. They go together. They're somehow or another. They're a couple. They go together, right? You know, they don't. But bliss, that's another thing. Bliss, there's no problems. No, because where's the bliss? You know, where is it? It's just that bliss is sustainable. Happiness is a moment. It's just that you've decided that if I gain a certain situation or experience, then I'll be happy. But the point is as soon as that moment comes, it moves into the past. So then you're only recollecting the past, and then especially as it says here, the recollection or the memory gets less, so your power of being able to appreciate the past becomes less. And so you want something now. And so that it doesn't move forward. So, yes.
Is satisfaction then more like a decided or not
Yes, it's because then you're situating yourself in goodness, because you're situating yourself in the present. Present is what I have, I'm satisfied with. May not make you happy, but it won't make you distressed either. In other words, with happiness comes distress, the two go together. So if you want to be really happy, means you have to be able to tolerate going through really being distressed. If you want to be satisfied, then you don't have to deal with either. Right? So the best is, on the material platform is satisfaction. On the spiritual platform, that's bliss. Right? So in other words, on the material world, satisfaction is the highest you can get. Because in the spiritual world, it's the lowest. Right? Shantaras is the lowest. It's just satisfied. You see God in everything, and you have that personal, concept. You know it's all from the person, but you're appreciating his all-pervading and all, how he is everything, controlling everything, and seeing that mechanical aspect like that and appreciating it. But you don't have that sense of possession of the person, that therefore you want to take up service and other things like that. So it's the lowest, but they're fully Krishna conscious. But here, but they're on that side, they're Krishna conscious. Here, then that Shanta will get you up to the point of just being satisfied. So you don't have no material needs or desires. So you're unaffected by what's going on. So for the devotees, the sadhakas, they'll use that platform. So the Vijnana Maya is the platform of these jnanis, but it's also the platform of sadhakas. The devotees use that platform. They know, it's on the platform of the soul. They know they're not the body, the aspect of the spiritual. But they take it through to Krishna, while these big jnanis and munis don't. But the practice is the same. Situation is the same. Is that, it's just like, let us say you have this nice, peaceful, area in the park. No people there. That yogis will go there and sit down and do their yoga. We'll also pick that place to do a nice kirtan. You understand? It's the same kind of thing. Does that make sense? Okay, so they will gradually diminish, right? Because the more you take it away from Krishna, then the more it diminishes. So previously people would be more situated in their moral principles or in their religious, but as they give that up, then you see gradually just everything goes down. And then once it goes down, it's very hard to put back. So you can only really put it back by Krishna consciousness. Because Krishna consciousness then is a positive element that can generate good qualities. Well, if you've lost moral principles, then what can generate good qualities? Right? So it's a very slow thing. It's only when you become so disturbed by the bad situations, then you may start to appreciate that, you might have to act better or deal better or, acknowledge that other individuals exist. And, terrifying concepts like that. So, yeah. Okay. Since dharma, or the principles of religion, would be lost in the proportion of 3 out of 4, the symbolic bull was standing on one leg only. Right, because he's religion, and then there's 4 legs, so he's only standing on one. When 3/4 of the population of the whole world becomes irreligious, the situation is converted into hell for the animals. In the age of Kali, right, because that's what you mentioned before, they automatically start to exploit the animals. Right? I mean, they're going to exploit everything, but the point is control and enjoyment, then you can take more control, so that it's supposed to give more enjoyment, right? You know what I'm saying? It's how much control is there over a cauliflower in the backyard? Yeah? Total domination, yeah. Something like that. Yeah, you understand? But when you can control the animals, then it has more of a... In the age of Kali, godless civilizations will create so many so-called religious societies in which the personality of Godhead will be directly or indirectly defied. Right? So they create these social environments. So we have to be very, very careful is that we also don't get distracted by these. As we said before, this aspect of vox populi has to be seen that it's not actually very important. You know, as he said, the Kali Yuga, that's one of the symptoms. This anxieties for maintaining the status quo. That's vox populi. Is you want to do what everybody else does. Like someone was explaining yesterday, is that the what's the point? Yes. Let's say you have the population, and you know you have the church, and so then everybody's part of that church. So as you grow up, you want to fit in socially, so then everybody's part of that church, so you just become part of that church. And as long as that is in the mood, it'll just continue like that. But then you see with time, then, you know, whatever the reasons are, as the Kali Yuga goes, then people start to think is that church is not so important. So even though so many people are still part of the church, but the talk is about it's not so important. So now those who grow up, they want to be part of something, they become part of what's talked about. And that's not being part of the church. So then they don't take part. You understand? So like that, it's whatever is there, whatever's talked about, then we take it that this is important. But it's not necessarily. You know what I'm saying? It's just, you know, different sides of the same coin. So, yeah. So then the difficulty comes up is that as leaders, then you have to see is that there is already standards. Krishna consciousness has standards. The Vedas have standards because it's about pleasing Krishna. That's the important point. So then you try to see is, okay, if there are certain trends that are there and you can go along with it, great. But if it works, then it's nice. Like someone was telling me the other day is that, you know, they went to a program, and at this program, then, you know, we always do vegetarian stuff, but somehow at this program, because the modern thing is the vegan, they did a vegan menu, and it didn't go down well. You know, because people, they preferred the vegetarian, right? Does that make sense? So even though it's a trend, it doesn't mean it's a trend here. Or what's a trend here doesn't mean it's a trend somewhere else. Yes?
Yeah, but a classical example of this leader who's succumbing to most popular was Pontius Pilatus.
Ah, yes, yes.
He's like, you want Jesus released or Barabbas? He was a serial murderer.
Yeah, yeah.
And people
But he was a good organizer. Barabbas. He was a good organizer.
And the people, yeah, Barabbas released him, and he like, okay, the people wanted it, so I wash my hands.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible.
Yeah. Well, he knew the other one is better, but still, that's the point. So it's a very good example. That we can't say it's just because the people, because it's not necessarily that. See, it's not a problem is that you don't care about what the people say. The point is why are the people saying this? Are they educated? Do they know what's the benefits? So they're working under the element that, okay, Judea is controlled by, you know, politically by the Romans, and because of that they're having some troubles, or at least they're perceiving that. You know, so the Zionism goes back a long time. It's not a new thing, you know. And so then in this, then they're thinking that Barabbas, being more of a political leader, he'll be able to free them from that. But the problem is then there's the illusion that politics will actually solve anything. You know, because before the Romans, they also had political problems. You know, like that. Because, you know, the Assyrians were there, this and that. There's always someone there. You know? So the difficulty comes up is that you have an opportunity to go beyond that, to transcend it. That's the much higher thing. So we always have to look at that, because what's popular isn't necessarily what's good. It's just somehow or another, even you're dealing with something good. When you throw something into fashion, it doesn't necessarily means that the latest fashion is good. It just means it's different. Good still works. You know what I'm saying? If you have fashion stuff that's good, you can wear it today despite that it's not in fashion. it will look good. Right? Like I just saw something the other day about this, one socialite. And he dresses specifically in the outfits that they would wear in the early 1900s, like 1908, like that. Somehow or other, there's a particular fashion. He wears that today to all the social functions. And we're talking about, whatever there is in the highest level of social functions. He goes to it like that, and he's always in style. Even though he's wearing something that's 110 years old. You know what I'm saying? So that's the thing, is this idea is that we need to change. We don't need to change. We need to give Krishna consciousness. So if people think that this new system is better, that's just due to a lack of understanding. And after a few years, someone will come up with a report saying it's not so great, and then everybody's opinion will change. So why not say that now? You just find a way to explain it to them that it's important. They have to consider it. Otherwise, if they don't, then youth is over quick enough. And then there's, money going away and health going away and all the nice things that, Kali Yuga has to offer. No memory, no mercy, no duration. All these nice things are just there waiting. So that's the whole thing, is the education we're an education movement. We're not a management movement. But education, if you want to do it on a big scale, you have to organize it. Like universities, they're organized. But you go to a university because of the teachers, not because it's got great management. Oh, the administration at Harvard is so good, I want to go there. No, you go there because of a teacher, because of a discipline that's there, a department that's there. You know what I'm saying? But that department's functioning because of management. So that's the whole thing, is that we have management, therefore we manage the education. So preaching is education. Like that. And for those who, can't, in other words, we give the philosophy, but along with that we give prasad, we have kirtan. So even if they don't understand the philosophy or appreciate it, the prasad they'll take, kirtan they'll listen to. And so that way then, there's practical, it's just like in the modern educational circles, if you have practicals in the education, like workshop is considered good. So for us, it's 2/3 of it's practical, 1/3 of it's discussions. Right? So, yeah. And thus, faithless societies of men will make the world uninhabitable for the saner section of people. Because they have their ideas, it's atheistic because it's their own ideas. That's what we say, is they grow up from religious principles down into moral principles, and then they make up their own moral principles, like that. Because you have the aspect of being a Muni, you have a position because you do something different. So then if you have the standard, then different has to be different from the standard. That means it's not standard, means it doesn't work. But at least because it's new, people will try it, and it'll be fresh for a while. Right? You just think of it. The society is there, and people are joining it, but they get disheartened even after 6 months or a year, 2 years. But how much time does it take before that becomes, many people know about this? It'll take a long time. So it can have this turnover of completely dissatisfied people, but it'll go on for some time. Does that make sense? And then it has its effect, because it's breaking down authority. It puts doubts into the actual proper way of doing things. Because that's the thing, is if you can create a doubt, then you're not sure whether you should do it or not. Does that make sense? So if nothing else, you can create a doubt. It's like, if I can't enjoy it, nobody's enjoying it kind of mentality. Low class, but popular. There are gradations of human beings in terms of proportionate faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? So here it's very important to understand is that when we're talking about discrimination, the word discriminating means using intelligence. So if we're saying we don't discriminate, does that mean we're working on good qualities or we're working on a lack of intelligence? Right? So you have to be able to appreciate that discrimination doesn't mean that there's a negative effect. It just means you can tell the difference between one thing and another. Does that make sense? Like you can tell the difference between the floor and the wall. So you sit on the floor, not the wall. Right? That's discrimination. Does that make sense? It means you have the political form of it. So you have to be very, very careful to appreciate. Is that the political form, that it's still there, despite them saying it's not there. But the point is that what we're meaning is that the soul, everybody in their position, whatever it is, can go back to Godhead. So if you're taking that as the central point, then where's the discrimination? As long as everybody can be engaged in Krishna consciousness, then it works out. Does that make sense? So then that's okay. The first class faithful men are the Vaishnavas and the Brahmanas, right? Because so you're taking it by how much faith there is. That's the actual point. Human life is meant to go back to Godhead, so therefore quality of life is by how much faith is there. Does that make sense? That's the real thing. It's not about the social status, who has money, who has position, who has power, and all that. Because we'll look at, now describing this Varnashram, we'll look at it from the social and political position. But what about the devotional position? What about the faith, the position of faith? Does that make sense? First class fifth men are the Vaishnavas and the Brahmanas, then the Kshatriyas, then the Vaishyas, then the Shudras, then the Mlechas, then the Mlechas, the Yavanas. Yeah, so in other words, Mlechas are lower than Shudras, Yavanas are lower than the Mlechas, and then the Chandalas. The degradation of the, so all these, what we're talking about here is that there's a mentality. That's the main thing. It means you can take the external, what you're looking at, and look at that as the distinguishing factor, but it's not, it's the mentality. So it's just like the devotees. So when you're talking about Vaishnavas and Brahmanas, the Vaishnavas, then within the Vaishnava community, you may have the Varnashram system, but being Daiva Varnashram, it's still all within Vaishnava, so it's all first class. It's just a matter of who does what activity within that, right? But if you're dealing on the material platform, generally it's a difference in mentality, a difference in values, right? Because then for the Brahmanas, the Vaishnavas, it'll be about the Lord. It'll be based on Scripture. The Brahmanas, it'll be based on Scripture. There'll be some degree of understanding to the Lord. At least minimum understand Brahman. Maybe they'll catch Paramatma, but only if they catch Bhagavan, that makes them Vaishnavas. Right? The Kshatriyas, then they have faith in the system, that they follow the authority, follow the regulation and all that. They generally take advice from the Brahmins and all that, so that puts them there. But for them, if it's not practical, it's not real. Does that make sense? So what's practical for the Brahmins is not necessarily practical for them. Like the Brahmins can work on the theory because they'll apply it, right? Because that's the aspect of Jnanamoy, is that, I mean, Vijnanamoy is that the theory is your practical application. Jnana Yoga means the theory that others talk about the modes of nature and it's there, that's what they work within. Right? So the Kshatriyas, then that will be Manamoy, so they'll have to have the practical application of that to make it of value to them. Does that make sense? No? Okay. Then the Vaishyas, then, unless it's making profit, like for the Kshatriya, is Yudhishthira making profit when he's out in the forest? No. So the Vaishya, before that had happened, would arrange it that doesn't happen. He still makes profit. Does that make sense? But Yudhishthira Maharaj, why did he go? If it was just about justice and this and that, which is, does that make sense? How the Vaishya look at it. Then he would have looked at it that Duryodhana is misbehaving here. But he looked at it from my senior, my authority, Dhritarashtra, is approving of it. So therefore he went with it. But in that, he lost everything. But if he was looking at it economically, he would have just said, this is crazy, you can't do this. Because that means if you have your professional gambler, I'll have mine. Or you don't have yours, I don't have mine. Because the rule is you can't have a professional gambler gamble on your behalf between Kshatriyas. It's illegal. So Duryodhana was behaving in an illegal way, but because Dhritarashtra was sanctioning it, he went with it. You understand? The Vaishya wouldn't do that. He has to make his profit. So, in other words, dharma and these higher things aren't as important. They're important in other words, piety makes profit. But as when profit may be lost, piety might be given up. Or you'll switch to another aspect of piety to maintain it. Does that make sense? So that's the thing, is that the Brahmins and Kshatriyas might lose based on maintaining their standards. Vaishyas are generally adjust. They're survivors. They'll make sure they'll recreate themselves and come out with something else. So do you understand? So the mentality is more attached to the mechanical. The one is you have it's the philosophy, the culture that's there. Then the other is that, but it has to be practical. Then that, as long as it's making profit, the good parts of it, right? And then you have come down, and then the Shudras. Then it'll be the art of it, the mood of it, the feeling of it, the experience of it. Because like the Vaishya may getting a bad experience, but he's making profit. He's good. Like that, I was saying, I don't know if you have it here, laughing all the way to the bank. You have that saying? No? So, it looks bad for everybody else, but he's doing it. Like, what do you call it? Like I remember two individuals once talking about, how sometimes it comes up and they get into these stupid kind of things about, would you do this for, like that. Okay, for $1 million, would you, how you say, kiss a pig that's come out of the sewer in Vrindavan? One said, oh, forget it. And like, then the other guys, why not? You get $1 million. You could do so much for Krishna with $1 million. So, it's like, whole difference in mood, right? Yeah. So now Malechas, they're meat eaters. But they might have some religious, some value and things like that. They're not necessarily opposed to the Vedas, just that their senses are uncontrolled, and so then they stop at this time because we're gone over time. Okay, so we'll take a break for a few minutes, and then we'll come back at